The Mercedes keys slipped from his trembling fingers, hitting the marble floor with a sound that echoed through the empty penthouse like a gunshot. Behind him, the elevator doors closed with finality, taking away the last of his belongings. He pressed his face against the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city lights blur through his tears, knowing that somewhere down there, an old man with a flip phone was probably sitting in his worn recliner, not even thinking about him anymore. My name is Robert, and I've been carrying the same flip phone for 12 years. Not because I can't afford something newer, though my daughter's fiancé seemed convinced that was the case, but because this particular phone holds numbers that most people would kill to have. Numbers that can change lives with a single call. But I'm getting ahead of myself. The embarrassment started small, the way these things always do. Just a sideways glance at the restaurant table when I pulled out my phone to check the time. Madison's new fiancé, Derek, tried to hide his smirk behind his wineglass, but I caught it. 28 years old, sharp suit, the kind of confidence that comes from never having been truly hungry. "Dad, you're still using that thing?" Madison laughed, but not the warm laugh I remembered from her childhood. This one had edges. "Derek's been telling me about these new phones that can practically run your whole life." Derek leaned forward, his Rolex catching the restaurant's soft lighting. Everything about him gleamed. His teeth, his hair, even his fingernails looked professionally maintained. "Mr. Coleman, with all due respect, I could get you set up with something from this decade. The iPhone 15 Pro has features that would blow your mind." I turned the flip phone over in my weathered hands. The plastic was worn smooth where my thumb rested, and there was a small crack near the hinge from when I dropped it rushing to Madison's college graduation. "This one works fine." "But, Dad," Madison pressed, "think about everything you're missing. Video calls with the grandkids when they come, GPS so you don't get lost driving to my place, even just taking decent pictures." The waiter appeared with our appetizers, giving me a moment to study my daughter's face. When had those little lines appeared around her eyes? When had she started looking at me like I was some relic she needed to manage? 3 months ago, she'd been calling me twice a week, asking about my arthritis, reminding me to take my blood pressure medication. Now she sat across from me in a dress that probably cost more than my monthly Social Security check, apologizing for my existence. "Your father's set in his ways," Derek said to Madison, as if I wasn't sitting right there. My grandfather was the same, refused to give up his rotary phone until the day he died. Sometimes you just have to accept that older generations get left behind by progress. Left behind. The words hit harder than they should have. I thought about the cramped apartment I'd moved to after the divorce, how I'd given up the house so Madison could finish college debt-free. I thought about the 60-hour weeks I'd worked at the plant, the double shifts when orders were heavy, the way my knees still ached from standing on concrete floors for 37 years. "Maybe Derek's right," I said quietly. "Maybe I am behind the times." Madison's face softened slightly. "We don't mean it like that, Dad. We just want you to enjoy the benefits of modern technology. Derek's actually really good with this stuff. He works for Hartwell Industries. They handle telecommunications for half the city." Derek's chest puffed up at the mention of his job. "Senior project manager, actually. I oversee the municipal contracts. It's pretty high-pressure work, but the compensation makes it worthwhile." He gestured vaguely at the expensive restaurant around us. "This is actually where we closed the deal with the mayor's office. Last month, I convinced them to upgrade their entire emergency services communication system." "Impressive," I said, taking a sip of water. The ice clinked against my teeth, too cold, making me wince. "The thing is," Derek continued, warming to his favorite subject, himself, "in my line of work, image matters. When you're dealing with city officials, corporate executives, people who make million-dollar decisions, every detail counts. Your phone, your car, your clothes, even your restaurant. Choices." He glanced around the dining room with satisfaction. "It all sends a message about who you are." "And what message does my phone send?" Derek's smile faltered for just a moment. "Well, I mean, it's not really about the phone itself. It's more about adaptability, staying current, showing that you're not stuck in the past." Madison reached across the table and touched my hand. "Dad, Derek's just trying to help. He knows this world better than we do." Derek nodded eagerly. "Exactly. Take this afternoon. I was in a meeting with the head of municipal services, and he was showing off this new emergency response app on his phone. If I'd pulled out a flip phone to exchange contact information, it would have undermined my credibility completely. Must be nice, I said, working with such important people. It has its perks, Derek agreed, missing the edge in my voice entirely. Though honestly, the stress can be killer. Last week alone, I had to handle 3 major contract renegotiations. Sometimes I think about what it would be like to have a simpler job, you know? Something where you could just clock in, do your work and clock out without worrying about performance metrics and quarterly reviews. The appetizer plate sat untouched in front of me. My appetite had vanished somewhere around the time he'd called my life's work simple. Dad worked at Brennan Manufacturing, Madison said, and I heard the past tense like a small slap. 37 years. He was actually manufacturing. Nice, Derek interrupted. Good, honest work. My dad always said America was built by guys like you, Mr. Coleman, blue-collar workers who kept the wheels turning while other people handled the big-picture stuff. Other people. As if I'd spent 4 decades screwing bolts on an assembly line instead of running quality control for one of the region's largest defense contractors. As if I hadn't spent years learning metallurgy and stress testing, hadn't trained dozens of younger engineers, hadn't written reports that went directly to Pentagon procurement officers. But I didn't correct him. I just nodded and let Derek believe what made him comfortable. The flip phone's actually kind of charming in a retro way, Derek continued, apparently feeling generous now that he'd established his superiority. Like driving a classic car or wearing a vintage watch. It's a conversation starter, I'll give you that. My phone rang. The sound cut through Derek's monologue, like a blade, that old-fashioned ringtone that had annoyed Madison for years. In the quiet restaurant, it seemed impossibly loud. Other diners turned to look. I glanced at the caller ID, just a number, but I recognized it immediately. My stomach dropped. I should take this, I said, starting to stand. Dad, seriously? Madison's voice carried the particular strain of adult children everywhere, torn between love and embarrassment. Can't it wait until after dinner? Derek was already shaking his head. This is exactly what I mean about staying current. Modern phones have do not disturb features, priority contacts, even AI that can screen calls and... Excuse me, I said, stepping away from the table. Derek's voice followed me toward the restaurant's entrance. See what I mean about image? You can't just answer calls in the middle of dinner at a place like this. It sends the wrong message about priorities. I stepped outside into the October evening, the restaurant's warm glow fading. Behind me, as the door swung shut, the call was still ringing. Robert Coleman. Bob, thank God you picked up. The voice belonged to Senator Patricia Hayes, though she sounded nothing like the composed politician I'd known for 15 years. Her words came fast, breathless. We have a situation, a big one. I walked further from the restaurant's windows, out of Madison's line of sight. A couple passed by, laughing about something, their voices echoing off the buildings. Normal people having a normal evening. What kind of situation, Pat? The Meridian contract, the telecommunications upgrade Derek Ashford negotiated with the mayor's office last month. She paused, and I could hear papers rustling in the background. The encryption protocols are compromised. We're talking about a complete security breach of the emergency services network. My blood went cold. How compromised? Foreign actors. The FBI thinks it's been ongoing for at least 3 weeks. Every police dispatch, every fire department call, every ambulance route, all of it potentially monitored. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. Bob, they're calling it a national security incident. Homeland Security wants to tear up every contract Hartwell Industries has touched in the past 2 years. I leaned against the brick wall of the building next to the restaurant, my free hand pressed against my forehead. Through the window, I could see Derek gesturing animatedly while Madison picked at her salad. He was probably explaining why my phone call proved his point about outdated technology. What do you need from me? Your security clearance is still active, right? The Pentagon consultancy. Should be. Haven't used it since I retired, but yet. I need you to look at something tonight. The forensic analysis of the Hartwell systems. Papers rustled again. Bob, this isn't just about municipal contracts anymore. If this breach extended to any of the defense work they've been bidding on... She didn't need to finish. I understood. Hartwell Industries had been aggressively expanding, taking on bigger and bigger contracts. Derek had mentioned municipal services, but companies like that didn't stop at traffic lights and parking meters. Where? Federal Building downtown. Ask for Agent Morrison, Cybersecurity Division. Tell him you're the metallurgy consultant I requested. She paused. And Bob? This stays between us until we know how deep this goes. The mayor's office is in full damage, troll mode, but if this thing spreads, the line went dead. I stood there for a moment watching the traffic flow past. Lights, green lights, the steady rhythm of a city that had no idea how vulnerable it might be. My flip phone felt heavier in my hand. When I walked back into the restaurant, Derek was mid-sentence explaining something about bandwidth optimization to Madison. His face was flushed with wine and self-importance, which is why the encryption standards we implemented are actually above industry requirements. I insisted on military-grade protocols because you never know what kind of... He stopped when he saw me approaching. Everything okay, Mr. Coleman? Fine. I sat down and reached for my water glass, buying myself a moment to think. Work call, Derek laughed, a sound that grated like fingernails on a chalkboard. Work? Dad, you've been retired for 3 years. Some work doesn't stop when you retire. What kind of work could possibly be so urgent that... Derek's phone buzzed against the table. He glanced at the screen and his face went pale. Excuse me for just a second. He stood up quickly, nearly knocking over his wine glass, and walked toward the restroom with his phone pressed to his ear. I caught fragments of his voice. What do you mean suspended? No, that's impossible. Madison reached across the table. Dad, I'm sorry about earlier. Derek doesn't mean to sound condescending. He's just passionate about technology. I know. And, honestly, some of the things he's told me about his work are pretty impressive. The contracts he's landed, the systems he's designed. She smiled, the same smile she'd had at 8 years old when she brought me her report cards. I'm proud of him, you know. He's really going places. Through the restaurant's windows, I could see Derek pacing back and forth on the sidewalk, his phone still pressed to his ear. His body language had changed completely. The confident swagger was gone, replaced by sharp, agitated movements. Madison, I said carefully, what exactly did Derek tell you about the municipal contract? Oh, you know, the usual stuff. Emergency services communication upgrade, new encryption protocols, better response times. She picked at her salad. He was really excited about it because it was his first major solo project. His boss gave him complete autonomy. Complete autonomy. The words settled in my stomach like lead. Did he mention any other companies involved? Subcontractors, security consultants? Madison shrugged. I don't really pay attention to the technical details, but he did say something about how they beat out several bigger firms for the contract. His proposal was apparently much more cost-effective. Cost-effective. In cybersecurity, that usually meant corners cut, protocols simplified, safeguards eliminated. I thought about Senator Hayes's voice, the barely controlled panic when she'd said, foreign actors. Derek burst back through the restaurant doors, his face ashen. The confident young man who'd been lecturing me about image and adaptability was gone. In his place stood someone who looked like he'd just seen his future collapse in real time. I have to go, he announced, his voice cracking slightly. Work emergency. Madison looked up in alarm. What kind of emergency? It's 8 o'clock at night. The kind that can't wait. Derek was already pulling on his jacket, his movements jerky and panicked. There's some kind of technical issue with one of my projects. My boss needs me downtown immediately. Which project? I asked quietly. Derek's eyes snapped to mine, and for a moment I saw something there, a flash of fear, maybe even recognition, as if he was starting to understand that the old man with the flip phone might know more than he'd assumed. The municipal contract, he said slowly. The emergency services upgrade. I took another sip of water. Technical issues can be tricky. Derek stared at me. For a long moment, his mouth slightly open. Then he shook his head as if clearing it. I'm sure it's nothing major, probably just some compatibility problems with legacy systems. But his voice lacked conviction. Derek, honey, sit down, Madison said. Whatever it is, it can wait until tomorrow, can't it? No. Derek's phone buzzed again. He looked at the screen and his face went from pale to grey. No, it really can't. He leaned down and kissed Madison's cheek, but his attention was already elsewhere. I'll call you later. And Mr. Coleman, he paused, looking at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. That phone call you took, was it work? I said simply. Derek nodded slowly, then hurried toward the exit. Through the window, I watched him fumble with his car keys before finally getting into a sleek BMW and driving away faster than was probably safe. Madison stared after him, confusion written across her face. That was weird. He's never gotten a work call that urgent before. I pulled out my flip phone and scrolled through my contacts, looking for Agent Morrison's number. Senator Hayes had said tonight, and Derek's panic suggested there wasn't much time. Dad, what are you doing? Making a call, I said, standing up again. This might take a while. As I walked toward the exit for the second time that evening, my phone rang again. Different number this time, but I recognized it immediately. Pentagon Procurement Office. This was bigger than Senator Hayes had let on. The Pentagon call lasted exactly 47 seconds. Mr. Coleman, this is Colonel Martinez, Defense Procurement Office. We need you downtown. Now. That was it. No explanations, no pleasantries, just an address and a time, 9:30 p.m., which gave me exactly 53 minutes to get across the city. I found Madison in the restaurant bathroom, touching up her makeup with the methodical precision she'd inherited from her mother. The same careful attention to detail that had gotten her through law school, through the bar exam, through the kind of life I'd never been able to give her. Dad, is everything okay? You look... I have to go. Work emergency. She turned from the mirror, eyebrows raised. 2 work emergencies in one night? What are the odds? Higher than she realized, but I couldn't tell her that. Sometimes these things pile up. Can you get home? Of course, but... She studied my face. This is about Derek's call, isn't it? Smart girl. Always had been. What makes you say that? The timing, the way you both got that same look. She put her lipstick away and faced me directly. Dad, what kind of work do you really do? The question I'd been dreading for 3 years. How do you explain to your daughter that her old man, the guy who packed lunch in a metal box and came home with grease under his fingernails, spent the last decade of his career designing stress test protocols for submarine hulls, that the flip phone she was embarrassed by contained numbers that could mobilize federal task forces? Quality control, I said, same as always. For who? People who need things done right. Madison's reflection looked back at me from the bathroom mirror, and I saw her mother's determination in her eyes. Derek's in trouble, isn't he? I kissed her forehead the way I had when she was small and afraid of thunderstorms. Take care of yourself, sweetheart. I'll call you tomorrow. The drive downtown took 38 minutes through evening. Traffic that moved like molasses. I spent most of it listening to news radio, waiting for some hint of what was coming. Nothing yet. Whatever this was, they were keeping it quiet for now. The federal building looked like every other government structure, brutalist architecture designed to make citizens feel small. But tonight, it buzzed with an energy that had nothing to do with normal business hours. Too many cars in the parking garage, too many windows lit up on floors that should have been empty. Agent Morrison turned out to be a compact woman in her 40s, with the kind of tired eyes that came from staring at computer screens for 12 hours straight. She met me at the security checkpoint with a cup of coffee that smelled like it had been brewing since the Clinton administration. Mr. Coleman? I'm Special Agent Morrison, FBI Cybersecurity Division. Thank you for coming so quickly. Senator Hayes said you needed a metallurgy consultant, among other things. She handed me a visitor's badge. What I really need is someone who understands defense contractor protocols from the inside, someone who knows how these systems are supposed to work when they're built right. We rode the elevator to the 7th floor in silence. The hallway beyond looked like a war room. Agents hunched over laptops, whiteboards covered with network diagrams, the low hum of urgent conversations. Through an open conference room door, I caught a glimpse of familiar faces. General Morrison from the E. Joint Chiefs, Deputy Director Walsh from Homeland Security. This wasn't just big. This was catastrophic. Here's what we know, Agent Morrison said, leading me to a smaller room lined with monitors. 3 weeks ago, Hartwell Industries completed installation of a new emergency services communication system for the city. State-of-the-art equipment, military-grade encryption, the works. She clicked a button, and the largest screen filled with a network diagram that looked like a spider web made of nightmares. What they delivered was a back door into every critical system in the city. Police dispatch, fire department communications, ambulance routing, traffic management, even the emergency alert system that warns people about natural disasters. I studied the diagram following the connection points. Who designed the architecture? Derek Ashford, Senior Project Manager, Hartwell Industries, 28 years old, MBA from a decent school, no prior experience with defense-grade systems. Her voice carried the particular disgust reserved for amateurs who played with things they didn't understand. He convinced the mayor's office to go with a streamlined approach that eliminated what he called unnecessary redundancies. Those redundancies are security protocols, exactly, but his proposal came in 40% under budget, so they gave him full autonomy. She clicked to another screen showing financial records. Turns out Ashford subcontracted the actual technical work to a firm called Nexus Solutions. The name meant nothing to me, but the way Morrison said it suggested I should be worried. Nexus Solutions is a shell company. We traced the ownership through 6 different layers of corporate structures before it dead-ended at a server farm in Romania. But here's the interesting part. They've been bidding on defense contracts for the past 18 months. My blood pressure spiked. Which contracts? Naval Communications Upgrade Program, Air Force Base, security systems, and your old stomping ground, submarine communications arrays. I sat down heavily in the nearest chair. 37 years of work, countless hours ensuring that American sailors would have reliable communication systems in the most hostile environments on Earth. And some kid with an MBA had just handed the keys to foreign intelligence services. How much did they get? Morrison pulled up another screen, this one showing network traffic analysis. Every emergency dispatch in the city for 3 weeks. Police response patterns, ambulance routes, fire department deployment strategies. They know exactly how long it takes for help to arrive anywhere in the metropolitan area. That's not the worst part, is it? No. She clicked again. The worst part is that Hartwell Industries has been using the municipal contract as a proof of concept for bigger projects. They've got pending bids with the State Department, the Department of Energy, and NORAD, the North. American Aerospace Defense Command, the people who watch for incoming missiles and decide whether to wake up the president at 3 in the morning. Please tell me those contracts aren't approved yet. They're not. But if Ashford's security vulnerabilities had gone undetected for another month, she didn't need to finish. I could imagine the briefing slides, the congressional hearings, the careers that would end in disgrace. My flip phone rang. Morrison raised an eyebrow. Work emergency. I looked at the caller ID, Derek Ashford. You could say that. I showed her the screen. Your star contractor wants to chat. Morrison's eyes lit up. Answer it. Keep him talking. I flipped open the phone. Hello, Derek. Mr. Coleman? Derek's voice was tight, strained. I need to ask you something, that call you got at dinner. Who was it? Work. But what kind of work? I mean, you're retired, right? From manufacturing? Through the conference room's glass wall, I could see agents moving, with the focused urgency of people racing against time. Someone was setting up recording equipment. Derek, where are you right now? Downtown, at my office. There are federal agents here, Mr. Coleman. They're asking questions about my municipal contract, about security protocols, about companies I've never heard of. His voice cracked. They keep asking if I had help with the technical specifications. Did you? I had to subcontract some of the implementation. The timeline was too tight to handle everything in-house. A long pause. Mr. Coleman, who did you used to work for before you retired? Morrison was gesturing frantically, pointing to recording equipment that was now blinking red. Keep him talking. People who needed things done right, I said again. That's not an answer. Please. I think I'm in serious trouble here. And Madison said you might be able to help. She said you used to work on important projects. Important projects. If only he knew. Derek, listen carefully. You need to cooperate with the federal agents. Tell them everything about Nexus Solutions, how you found them, who you spoke with, what access you gave them. Don't leave anything out. How do you know about Nexus Solutions? I looked at Morrison, who nodded grimly. Because, son, that flip phone you were making fun of, it's connected to people who've been watching your work very carefully, and right now they're trying to figure out whether you're a criminal or just an idiot. The line went dead. Morrison was already reaching for her radio. All units, subject may be attempting to flee. Lock down the Hartwell building immediately. But I was thinking about something else. The look on Derek's face when he'd left the restaurant. The way he'd stared at me like he was trying to solve a puzzle. He'd figured out I wasn't just some retired factory worker. The question was, what was he planning to do about it? Morrison's radio crackled to life 30 seconds later. Agent Morrison, this is Unit 7. Subject has exited the building through the parking garage. Black BMW, license plate Hotel Alpha 749. He's heading west on 5th Street. Pursue but do not apprehend. I repeat, do not apprehend. We need to see where he goes. Morrison turned to me. Your son-in-law just made this a whole lot more complicated. He's not my son-in-law yet. At this rate, he might not get the chance to be. Through the conference room window, I watched agents scramble to their stations, laptops opened, phones dialed, the machinery of federal law enforcement grinding into motion. It reminded me of the plant during rush orders, controlled chaos with a purpose. Morrison pulled up a map on her screen. We've had surveillance on Ashford for 6 hours, ever since Senator Hayes brought us the initial intelligence. His phone, his car, his credit cards, all tagged. But if he's running instead of cooperating, he knows something that scares him more than federal prison. That's what I'm afraid of. She clicked through several screens of data. Mr. Coleman, I need to ask you something, and I need a straight answer. When you were consulting for the Pentagon, did you ever work on Project Deepwatch? The name hit me like a physical blow. Deepwatch had been classified so far above my pay grade that I'd needed special clearance just to review the metallurgy reports. Submarine communication arrays that could operate under Arctic ice, relay signals from depths that would crush a normal hull, maintain contact with naval intelligence even if the entire surface fleet was destroyed. How do you know about Deepwatch? Because Nexus Solutions has been asking very specific questions about submarine communication protocols, questions that suggest they know exactly what they're looking for. Morrison's face was grim. Questions that could only come from someone with access to classified specifications. My flip phone rang again. Unknown number, this time. Morrison was already gesturing to the recording equipment. Answer it. Robert Coleman. Mr. Coleman, this is Derek. Please don't hang up. The voice was different now, steadier, more controlled. The panic was gone, replaced by something that sounded almost like resignation. Where are you, Derek? Somewhere safe. Somewhere I can think. A pause. You used to work on submarine systems, didn't you? The deep water communication arrays. There was no point in lying anymore. Yes. The metallurgy reports you wrote. They went to Groton, didn't they? Electric Boat Division. The people who build attack submarines for the Navy. Morrison was frantically taking notes, her face pale. Only a handful of people knew about the electric boat connection, and none of them should have been talking to Derek Ashford. Derek, who told you that? The same people who told me you'd be at that restaurant tonight. The same people who suggested I bring up your flip phone. Make sure everyone noticed. How outdated your technology was. His laugh was bitter. They said it would be funny, a harmless joke to play on Madison's father. My blood went cold. They who? My contacts at Nexus Solutions. They've been helping me with contracts for 8 months now. Technical specifications, bid strategies, even restaurant recommendations. Another pause. They knew everything about you, Mr. Coleman. Your retirement date, your security clearance level, even your daughter's engagement. Morrison was writing furiously, but I could see the horror in her eyes. This wasn't just espionage, it was orchestrated, planned, personal. Derek, listen to me very carefully. Those people aren't your friends. They're foreign intelligence operatives, and they've been using you. I know what they are. His voice was quiet now, almost whisper-soft. I figured it out about 2 hours ago when the FBI started asking questions. But here's the thing, Mr. Coleman. They know where Madison lives. They know her daily routine, her favorite coffee shop, the route she takes to work every morning. The recording equipment captured my sharp intake of breath, the sound of my heart rate spiking into dangerous territory. They're not going to hurt her, Derek continued. As long as I do exactly what they tell me to do, as long as I get them one more piece of information. What information? The current encryption keys for the Deepwatch communication system, the ones that get updated every 72 hours. Derek's voice was steady now, professional. They know you still have access through your Pentagon consulting contract. They know you can get them. Morrison was shaking her head violently, making slashing motions across her throat. But I could see the calculation in her eyes. Madison's life weighed against national security. And if I don't? They showed me pictures, Mr. Coleman. Pictures of Madison leaving her apartment this morning, walking to the coffee shop on Maple Street, sitting at the outdoor table where she always sits when the weather's nice. His voice cracked slightly. They have someone watching her right now. Through the conference room window, I could see agents running, phones ringing, the controlled chaos of a federal investigation spinning out of control. But all I could think about was Madison, sitting in some coffee shop, completely unaware that her fiancé's ambition had painted a target on her back. The encryption keys change in 6 hours, Derek said. They want the new set as soon as it's generated. They've given me an address, a meeting point. You bring the keys, I bring Madison, everyone goes home safe. Except for the sailors. What? The sailors who depend on those communication systems. The submarine crews who'll be sailing blind if foreign intelligence services can intercept their transmissions. I closed my eyes, thinking about all the young men and women I'd never met, whose lives depended on the work I'd done. How many people die if... Those encryption keys are compromised, Derek. Silence on the other end. Derek? I don't know. I've been trying not to think about it. His voice was barely audible now. But Madison is my whole world, Mr. Coleman. I can't lose her. And I can't lose my daughter, but I also can't betray everything I've spent my life protecting. Morrison was writing something on a piece of paper, holding it up for me to see. Keep him talking. We're tracing the call. There has to be another way, I said. There is no other way. They were very clear about that. Derek's voice was getting stronger again, more determined. 6 hours, Mr. Coleman. Pier 17, Warehouse District. You bring the encryption keys, or Madison disappears forever. The line went dead. Morrison was already on her radio. All units, we have a credible threat against a civilian. Madison Coleman, age 26, attorney, lives at... She rattled off Madison's address, her daily routine, every detail Derek had mentioned. I sat in the government-issue chair, staring at my flip phone, thinking about choices. 37 years ago, I'd taken an oath when I first got security clearance. I'd sworn to protect classified information against all enemies, foreign and domestic. I'd meant every word, but I'd also sworn to protect my daughter from the day she was born. Morrison finished her radio calls and turned back to me. Mr. Coleman, I need to know, can you get those encryption keys? Yes. Will you? I looked at the map on her screen, the red dot that represented Derek's location moving steadily through the city. Somewhere out there, Madison was probably finishing her dinner, wondering why both her father and her fiancé had abandoned her on what was supposed to be a special evening. Agent Morrison, how many federal agents do you have available for an operation tonight? As many as we need. Why? I flipped open my phone and scrolled through the contacts until I found the number I was looking for. Admiral Chant, Naval Intelligence. Because, I said, I think it's time Derek learned what happens when you threaten a submariner's family. My finger hovered over the call button for just a moment. Once I made this call, there would be no going back. Derek would learn exactly what kind of people carried flip phones with Pentagon numbers programmed into them, and Madison would finally understand why her father had never talked much about his work. Admiral Chen answered on the first ring. Bob, Christ. Sir, it's been, what, 2 years? Please tell me you're not calling with more bad news about hull stress fractures. Different kind of problem, Admiral. I need a favor. Name it. How many Navy SEALs do you have within 50 miles of the city tonight? The line went quiet for a moment, then, that depends. Are we talking about the kind of favor that requires paperwork, or the kind that never happened? I looked at Morrison, who was listening to every word. She nodded grimly. The kind that saves lives and protects national security. Give me 10 minutes. Admiral Chen hung up. I turned to Morrison. How long to get a tactical team to Pier 17? 20 minutes, maybe 15 if we... Too long. Derek's handlers will have spotters, escape routes planned. The moment they see federal vehicles, Madison becomes a liability. Morrison's face was grim. So what do you suggest? I suggest we give them exactly what they think they want. I scrolled through my phone again, found another. But first I need to make Madison disappear. The second call went to someone Derek's foreign friends definitely didn't know about. My neighbor, Mrs. Chen, Admiral Chen's wife, who'd been babysitting neighborhood kids for 30 years before she married into military intelligence. Helen, it's Bob Coleman from next door. I need you to pick up my daughter. Right now. Tonight. No questions asked. Where is she? Rosetti's restaurant on 5th Street. Tell her you're taking her somewhere. Safe? That I'll explain everything later. Consider it done. The third call was to Senator Hayes. Pat, I need you to authorize emergency access to the Deep Watch encryption system. Bob, you know I can't... They have my daughter. 2 words. That's all it took. Senator Hayes had daughters too. How long do you need? 6 hours. Long enough to set up a sting operation. Done. Check your email in 5 minutes. Morrison was staring at me with something approaching awe. Mr. Coleman, exactly. Who are you? Someone who spent 40 years making sure submarines could talk to each other underwater. I flipped my phone closed. Someone whose flip phone has numbers that most people don't even know exist. My email pinged. Authorization codes for accessing the most classified communication system in the U.S. Navy. I forwarded them to Morrison. Agent Morrison, I need you to generate fake encryption keys, something that looks real but won't actually compromise anything. How enough to fool foreign intelligence operatives, real enough to buy us time to rescue my daughter and roll up their entire network. Morrison's fingers flew across her keyboard. I can have something ready in 30 minutes. Good, because Admiral Chen's people will be in position by then, and Mrs. Chen will have Madison somewhere safe. My phone rang again. Derek, right on schedule. Mr. Coleman? Hello, Derek. I just want you to know, this isn't personal. I never wanted to hurt Madison. She's the best thing that ever happened to me. Then why are you doing this? Because 8 months ago I was drowning in student loans and credit card debt, because Nexus Solutions offered me a way out. Consulting fees, technical assistance, connections that could make my career. His voice was raw now, all pretense gone. Because I was stupid enough to think I could handle people smarter than me. Derek, where's Madison? She's safe. Mrs. Chen picked her up from the restaurant and, an hour ago, some story about a family emergency. Derek laughed bitterly. Your neighbor's a retired CIA operative, isn't she? The way she handled those spotters made them think she was just a concerned family friend. I smiled grimly. Helen Chen had been running assets in Southeast Asia before Derek was born. Old habits die hard. So your handlers lost track of Madison? About 40 minutes ago. They're not happy. Fear crept back into Derek's voice. Mr. Coleman, they're talking about making examples, about how Americans need to learn that actions have consequences. Actions do have consequences, Derek. The question is whether you're smart enough to choose the right action. I don't understand. Turn yourself in. Right now. Walk into the nearest FBI field office and tell them everything. Every contact, every meeting, every piece of information you passed along. I can't. They'll kill me. Maybe. But if you don't, Admiral Chen's people will find you within the hour. And I promise you won't enjoy that conversation. Silence on the other end. Derek? Admiral Chen? As in the man who's been responsible for submarine communication security for the past 15 years. The man whose wife just rescued my daughter from your foreign friends. Another long silence. Mr. Coleman, what exactly did you do before you retired? I told you. Quality control. For submarines. For the people who protect this country underwater. We're one. Communication failure can mean the difference between coming home and disappearing forever. And the flip phone. contains numbers for people who take that responsibility very seriously. I checked my watch. Derek, you have 15 minutes to surrender before those people decide you're more trouble than you're worth. What about the encryption keys? What about them? They're expecting me to deliver them in 4 hours. Then I suggest you find a way to disappoint them, because the only keys they're going to get are the fake ones Agent Morrison is preparing right now. Derek's breathing was audible over the phone. This was all a setup, wasn't it? You knew they were watching you. I suspected. When you mentioned the municipal contract at dinner, when you knew specific details about defense procurement, people don't just stumble across that kind of information. How long have you known? About you. Since your first question about my phone. About them. Since Senator Hayes called during our appetizers. I paused. Derek, foreign intelligence services don't usually care about retired factory workers, but they care a lot about consultants with active Pentagon clearances. So the whole evening was them testing how close they could get to classified information through my family, how much leverage they could apply. I closed my eyes, thinking about Madison's face when Derek had made fun of my phone. They almost succeeded. Morrison tapped my shoulder and held up a tablet showing surveillance footage. Derek's BMW was parked outside a warehouse in the industrial district. 3 other vehicles had converged on the location in the past 10 minutes. Derek, I'm looking at aerial surveillance of your location right now. Those 3 cars that just arrived, they're not your friends from Nexus Solutions. What are you talking about? I'm talking about Navy SEALs who specialize in recovering stolen intelligence. I'm talking about FBI counterintelligence, teams who've been tracking foreign operatives for months. I watched the surveillance feed as figures in tactical gear moved with professional precision around the warehouse. I'm talking about what happens when you threaten the family of someone who spent 40 years protecting national security. Derek's voice was barely a whisper. They're surrounding the building. That's because foreign intelligence operatives just discovered that their carefully planned operation has turned into a federal takedown, because someone with a flip phone made some calls to people who don't appreciate having American citizens threatened. Mr. Coleman, I need you to know that I never wanted Madison to get hurt. I love her. I know you do, son. That's why you're going to walk out of that warehouse with your hands up and cooperate with the federal agents. Because the only way you ever see my daughter again is if you help them roll up every contact, every operation, every piece of classified information that's been compromised. The surveillance feed showed Derek's BMW moving slowly toward the warehouse exit. Morrison was coordinating with the tactical teams, ensuring a clean surrender rather than a firefight. Derek, I'm walking out now. I can see them. There are a lot of them. Good. Tell them you want to cooperate. Tell them Robert Coleman sent you. Will Madison? Will she ever forgive me? I thought about my daughter, probably sitting in Helen Chen's kitchen right now, drinking tea and wondering why her fiancé had abandoned her at dinner. I thought about the trust that had been broken, the lies that would need to be explained, the choice she'd have to make about whether love could survive betrayal. Derek, that's between you and her. But I'll tell you this. If you help the FBI catch every one of these people, if you make sure no other families get threatened the way mine was tonight, that's a start. The surveillance feed showed Derek stepping out of his car, hands raised, walking toward the federal agents. Behind him, the warehouse erupted in controlled chaos as tactical teams moved in to arrest his handlers. Morrison looked up from her radio. All suspects in custody. No shots fired. Your son-in-law is cooperating fully. He's not my son-in-law. After tonight, probably never will be. I flipped my phone closed and looked around the Federal Command Center. Agents were already processing intelligence from the arrested operatives, tracing bank accounts, identifying other compromised individuals. The machinery of justice grinding forward. But all I could think about was Madison, and the conversation we'd need to have tomorrow about why her father had never told her what he really did for a living. My flip phone rang one last time. Helen Chen. Bob? Madison's safe. She's asking a lot of questions about why federal agents are calling the house, but she's safe. Thank you, Helen. Bob? That boy of hers. He's in serious trouble, isn't? Hey, I looked at the surveillance footage showing Derek in federal custody, his BMW being loaded onto a truck, his carefully constructed life falling apart in real time. I said, "He is." Outside the federal building, dawn was breaking over a city that had no idea how close it had come to catastrophe. Emergency services would continue working normally, submarines would maintain secure communications, and foreign intelligence services would spend months trying to figure out how their carefully planned operation had unraveled so quickly. All because someone with a flip phone had numbers that really mattered. I walked to my old truck, the same one Derek had probably sneered at in the restaurant parking lot, and drove home to explain to my daughter why sometimes the most important people are the ones who don't need to prove how important they are. The flip phone stayed in my pocket, silent now but ready. Some tools never go out of style.